In traditional financial transactions, a centralized authority ensures the transaction's validity. But in decentralized crypto world, the validation process is carried out by the network's nodes. In other words, a blockchain relies on the consensus of its network's nodes. Consensus is reached through the use of specific consensus mechanisms. Proof of work and proof of stake are two of the most commonly used consensus mechanisms today. In this video, we'll get a better understanding of them. To be trustworthy, blockchains must be completely secured and verified by many people. This is achieved by consensus mechanisms. Essentially, consensus makes sure that every new block that is added to the blockchain is the only version of the truth that is agreed upon by all the nodes in the blockchain. In other words, a consensus algorithm is a process by which all the peers of a blockchain network reach a common agreement about the present state of the distributed ledger. Proof of work consensus is represented by the longest chain wins rule. This means that the longest chain of blocks is accepted as being the only valid one. The rule prevents multiple chains, each reflecting different versions of history, from existing side by side. The longer the consensual version of the blockchain becomes, the more computing power and resources would be needed to roll it back. For the longest chain rule to function securely, adding new blocks to the chain is designed to be progressively difficult. The proof-of-work concept was pioneered by Cynthia Dwork and Moni Nair in 1993. The term proof-of-work was coined by Marcus Jacobson and Ari Jules in 1999. Proof-of-work is the original consensus process used by Bitcoin. Once a new transaction is broadcast to the network, miners are competing to be the first one to solve the cryptographic puzzle. The answer to this puzzle is known as a hash. The first one to solve the hash receives the reward in form of cryptocurrency and a transaction fee. Bitcoin, for instance, currently rewards successful miners with 6.25 BTC, valued at well above $300,000. A part of every new hash contains the hash value of the previous transaction in the block. It does two things. 1. It prevents miners from validating fraudulent transactions. Second, it prevents double spending. Presently, the Bitcoin network mines one block of transactions every 10 minutes. Certain alterations to the Bitcoin blockchain have enabled Ethereum, the other primary user of proof of work, to complete this task in 13 seconds. The complexity of a proof of work puzzle depends upon the number of nodes in that network. Also, a puzzle's complexity is directly proportional to the computational power required to solve it. These days, it's nearly impossible for a single individual to own and operate enough computational power to mine a block before the competition. This is where mining pools come in. A mining pool combines computational power from thousands of miners worldwide to improve their chances of finding a block. As a result, even novice miners with a limited budget can participate in mining. If the pool finds a block, the reward is divided among all participating miners in proportion to their computational contribution. There are three major drawbacks of the proof of work method. Number 1. Proof of work is not eco-friendly. Proof of work is computationally intensive and it requires a lot of electricity. According to the University of Cambridge's Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index, Bitcoin miners are expected to consume roughly 130 terawatt-hours of energy, which is roughly 0.6% of global electricity consumption. As the demand for hash power, or computational power in the proof-of-work network grows, so does the demand for power. Since proof of work requires all nodes to guess computations for a single equation that can only be won by one node, all other nodes that failed in their attempt wasted valuable energy on that lost equation. Number 2. Proof of work is expensive and centralized. For most people, the high cost of equipment is a barrier to entry. This is where mining pools come into picture. But the concentration of mining pools in few locations may lead to centralization. In fact, Chinese Bitcoin miners currently control about 65% of the BTC network's hash rate. Number 3. Risk of 51% attack. A 51% attack is a term used to describe an event in which a group with more than 50% of the total mining power attempts to change the block for their benefit. A recent instance of a 51% attack occurred against a Verge blockchain, allowing the hacker to walk away with 35 million Verge coins. Proof of stake was created to address the mining process's energy consumption problem. Sonny King and Scott Nadel introduced it in 2012. This mechanism does not involve miners, and there is no need for high computational power, making it a greener alternative to proof of work. Since there is no puzzle solving or difficulty involved, transactions can also be verified quicker, leading to faster confirmations. Instead of mining, we have something called staking. Users in this consensus mechanism are known as validators or stakers. Proof of stake works based on stake method, where the validators stake certain amount of their coins. While validators are selected at random for a block, the individual with a higher stake has better chances of being chosen as the validator and will receive more staking rewards. Ethereum, for example, requires users to stake a minimum of 32 ethers to become a validator. After staking, these 32 ethers are locked up for a period. The staker is then asked to validate a handful of blocks every now and then. However, if their actions are deemed malicious by other validators, their staked ether will be confiscated for bad behavior. In proof of stake, no new coins are minted. The validators are only paid through transaction fees, where the rewards are from coins that were already created. Peercoin was first cryptocurrency to implement a full-scale proof of stake consensus model. When using a proof of stake consensus mechanism, it would not make financial sense to attempt to perform a 51% attack. For this to be achieved, the hacker would need to stake at least 51% of the total coins in circulation. If they buy these coins, then the real-world value of the coin would increase as well. As a result, they would end up spending more than they could gain from the attack. Not only this, but once the rest of the network had realized what had happened, the hacker would lose all of their stakes. Even though proof of stake is the future, it does have its flaws. Number 1. Centralization. The proof of stake system favors individuals with a higher amount of tokens. Thus, the more substantial stakeholders not only ends up with larger profit margins, he grows faster than a small stakeholder. At a certain point, when the cost of being part of the mining operation would become too high, small stakeholders may drop out, causing centralization. Number 2. Security. Proof of work is a tried and tested mechanism proven by Bitcoin's stability. Since proof of stake is relatively new, it just can't be used without a lot of testing. The problem with proof of stake especially arises when a blockchain is forked. Validators can validate transactions of both the chains without any consequences. This can be exploited to create multiple forks of the same blockchain. It introduces the problem of double spending, where the coin spent in the original chain might not be added to the forked chain. While proof of stake may seem better when compared to proof of work, but it just cannot be given the crown yet. Neither of them is perfect, but with proper testing and fixes, proof of stake may become the dominant consensus in future.